Conversations with Indie Authors.
Okay. Our next guest today's background includes things such as poetry, academia, comedy writing, and theater. Her debut novel, Starsick, is a blend of humorous science fiction. I'm going to let her tell her story. Welcome to the show, Amy Ayres.
Thank you for having me, Brittany. I'm excited.
So I was just talking to you, and now I want you to tell our audience take us back to the beginning. Where did you come up with this idea that humor is science fiction?
Okay, so you mentioned my background in like academia and poetry and everything, so that helps me out a little bit. I did start writing poetry a long time ago, and I really liked it. I had a lot of fun working with people in that community and really in academia teaching poetry and others how to write it and study it and everything. But then one day I was just like, I want to write a book, but I don't want to write like a poetry chapbook. I want to write like either a nonfiction, like a creative nonfiction book, like an autobiographical type thing, or I want to go the fiction route. And since I went the fiction route, I did sort of want to put myself a little bit into my books. And I was thinking about how to best express things that were happening in my life. So I've written a little bit of fantasy, written a little bit of comic romance. But as I was meeting more and more science fiction writers in like the writing community out there and on the internet and everything, I was gaining an interest for it. And I was wondering, what if I can do this? Like, it's not really my background. It's not really my forte, but if I studied it and I learned from people who know what they're doing, maybe I could do it too. And I could add a little bit of my own flavor to it. So that's sort of how me writing in that genre came about. And I was thinking about things that I wanted to write about that I saw were happening in real time that I thought in the future, if they progressed, it could get worse. And so that's sort of how that started out.
Okay, so before we started recording, we were talking about your number one passion in life is equality. Can you talk to us about how that relates to the book?
Sure. So the equality aspect of it, I really believe, is reflected in the main character. So the sort of funny thing that's happening in the world in Lucy, my main character's time, is that introversion is illegal. And that came about because it's factored into something that makes you less productive in this society. It makes you less social, and social currency has replaced regular currency. Basically, it's become much more important for you to keep track of and accumulate people in your sphere. And the more your sphere shrinks, the less useful you are to the powers that be. So there's obviously a disparity and equality there for people who are not in a position to sort of be on that level. And the idea sort of has a through line through all of the characters in the book. In some way, I think they are actually suffering from this like inequality, being pitted against someone else or compared to someone else and feeling unequal. And I just didn't even realize it until you asked me.
That's super cool.
Like, it's in there.
I like it. It just comes out because it's something you truly believe in. So that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm wondering because you've done poetry, you even taught how to
Mhm.
poetry. So
Yeah.
how do you translate that? Did it come out in the book a little bit too?
I think so. I think in all of my writing sort of started out as poetry and then sort of evolved into prose. Because I felt like when I was writing poetry, I was expressing something, and it's a wonderful way to express like deep fears and insecurities and adversities that you face. It's a wonderful genre for that. But if you want to tell a story, it starts to evolve. You can tell a story with poetry, but I really wanted to create these characters and put them in a setting and have them interact with each other. And just the more that I did that, the more it sort of evolved into fiction. And you mentioned that I have experience with comedy writing and improv and theater and things like that. So to me, like, even when I was doing comedy writing, playwriting, and that kind of thing, it's, to me, it's like all the same. Comedy writing has a lot to do with timing. So you're really getting down, like, you're fleshing out how people are supposed to be interacting and how they're supposed to like be bouncing things off of each other. And then with playwriting, it's just dialogue in my mind. That's what playwriting is. It's just writing the dialogue. And then the poetry is like the poetic aspect. So in my mind, I just try to combine everything I knew how to do and turn it into something that looked like fiction. It was a learning process. So
I think that the dialogue is probably one of the hardest things for a lot of people to come up with, to actually do and make it look natural or feel natural when you're reading it. That's a difficult thing. So how did you learn that part? Because like,
I
that's
agree.
not just like
it is difficult. And I think it's difficult if you have little experience with it and you're focused on other things. Like, one thing that I'm really awful at is description and setting. So a lot of times, and it takes a lot of work for me to really nail down those details. And you often, I feel like, will feel like you're in a white room. If you read something that I haven't really edited, you're like, where are we? We're not grounded in a place. I have no idea what's happening. But these characters, like, they're start talking a lot. Yeah. And, that's kind of how it is before I start really trying to fix it. And I think it's from all that experience of watching plays and seeing the dialogue in real time and being acted out and seeing the emotion on the actors' faces and saying, okay, this dialogue is, how are they expressing an emotion? How are they getting the point across to the audience? So I think if you have that experience, it really helps. So when you sit down and like create these characters, you're imagining the emotions on their face. You're imagining how they are, like, in conflict with each other, which is really important in dialogue. There always needs to be some sort of conflict that's being resolved through words, or not resolved, because a lot of times people are like, like, I don't know what to do with this. We'll figure it out in the next chapter. So that, I would say, that part of it does come a little bit more naturally to me, but only because of all the experience I have with that.
That makes sense. So this is your debut novel. What do you have in the works?
So right now, I'm actually, for NaNoWriMo, I'm writing the prequel. And I just recently had the idea to write it because a lot of people had some questions about the characters and their backstory and how they got to where they are in this book. And I thought it would be just really fun to like write a little prequel novella to it. But I have been also working on a contemporary fantasy novel called Five Doors, which I think is going to be really fun. It's still in the works, and it needs to see my editor again. And but hopefully it'll be out next year. It's a little bit of a deviation from Starsick, where it deals with a lot of fantasy elements, time travel, magic systems and stuff like that. So it kind of goes in a different direction, but I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. I always want an audiobook to have, like, make it feel more magical. Whenever there's magic, I like magic. I'm into magic. That's what I always stop. I don't watch television very often, but when I do, it's usually something magical.
Oh, that's awesome. Like what? Sorry, I'm just curious.
I don't even know what it's called. There's one I was looking on Netflix. I think it was a Netflix original. I watched like part of, oh my goodness. I will have to email you, because now I'm like, I have no idea what it was called. I'll go downstairs and I'll find out. I don't know.
I know what you mean. I was just wondering because I didn't know if I was watching the same thing, and I was gonna
that would be cool. Oh, you know what I was gonna say is, because I always look people up before they come on. I try to look on YouTube because I want to see, how they interact, what's their flow and that kind of thing. And all I could come up with that spelling was a country singer.
for my name. That's funny.
Yes.
That's definitely not me.
Like, is she a famous country singer I didn't know about? Like,
Oh, that's so funny. I did used to sing. I have sung, but country is like the only kind of singing I haven't done. So that's kind of funny. But
that's
I'm no
hysterical.
by means a famous singer. No, unfortunately.
Oh, do you have any other unusual talents?
Well, I told you my unusual to right now I have an almost 2-year-old, so my day sort of
Nice.
revolves around entertaining her. And sometimes I get kind of bored with the songs that she listens to. She watches a lot of like, I don't know if you've heard of it, like Coco Melon and like Little
Yes.
Baby Bomb and shows like that. So I'll like take the tunes of those songs and just like make up words. And she thinks it's hilarious. Even if I'm just like talking about how she needs to brush her teeth and put on her pajamas. Like I'll sing a little song that I made up on
That's
the spot.
awesome.
But the only thing I can really do, like, can't think of anything else.
I'm like, you should film that and put it up on TikTok, I'm pretty sure.
I put some YouTube videos up.
There you go.
That's a good idea. I should be
I
there. So
have
when people look me up, they can find me.
is she the country singer or is she the kid singer? We don't know. There's
She's
not a whole
something.
lot of them. Yeah. She's another. I don't know. Oh, that's pretty funny. So are you still a professor now, or are you still working in academia, or what are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm sort of in the publishing space.
Oh,
I do like virtual marketing for
okay.
publishing companies, and I can be in that world where I'm talking to writers and publishers, and so it's really exciting to do that, and it helps me. I can work from home, so
That's
like I said, I'm a
nice.
stay-at-home mom, and I do the VA thing in the
Mhm.
publishing sphere. I mean, I used to teach English for a long time, and I love teaching writing. It's really hard to find those gigs nowadays. they're
I understand
they're few
that.
and far between. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So you're getting to learn some insider information when you're, yeah, working marketing and stuff. Doesn't that help you with your own marketing?
for sure, yeah, a lot of these virtual publishing summits, these companies, they put out a lot of information on how to self-publish. And I've had writer friends of mine who are kind of spinning their wheels for a while too, trying to figure out like whether I should self-publish or not. And I sort of like I watched other people do it and I was like, oh, like I'm gonna try that because I'm really, like publishing is a really interesting world where there's like a very traditional way to go about it. And now because of all this technology we have, there's a lot of new interesting ways to do it, and people are playing with all the new ways to do it every day and changing things up and just changing the game. So I wanted to jump in and be a part of it.
That's awesome. You know, there's been a huge movement of indie authors and self-publishing. It's because I know very well that the attitude has been if you self-publish, then you are not a real author, real author. That's been but I
Right.
talk to people on both sides, and I would say it seems much harder to be self-published because you're doing everything on your own. You're doing every single thing. You have to be your own
Yeah,
advocate. You have to be out there fighting, and you still do when you are traditionally published. But they chose you, and they
exactly.
choose everything for you and tell you how to get things done. So because they have the knowledge. And the other way, I see a lot of authors feel defeated because a lot of times authors are introverted. So it's funny
Right.
your book is about that.
Exactly.
And then they're trying to be on social media and they're like,
Mm,
hey,
I don't know what to do.
I have no idea. Just buy my book, please. I worked hard.
Yeah. I
And
think
so
it's been a big change with social media in that, like with TikTok and Instagram, which I feel like is really my wheelhouse, is with people making like funny videos about writing, about being a writer. And you can sort of like create your own original content, or you could just kind of do your own version of what the people are doing, like do a combination of both. Because I feel like that's a really good way to learn, is to just, if you're scrolling through Instagram reels and you go, well, I could make a reel like that about my book, like I could take this audio and throw up this meme and like, and I think it's fun. I feel like being an indie author like gives me a lot of freedom that I'm not sure I would have otherwise.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, going in, when I kind of made this decision, that like I'm super impatient. Like I am just a really impatient person. And I know that being traditionally published requires a lot of patience. It's kind of a waiting game where, you're waiting to hear back from agents, you're waiting to hear back from publishers, you're waiting to hear back on this and that. And I'm just like, if you're doing everything, like you're only waiting on yourself, like, just to get it done, it's like, so it gives you a little bit more control. And I think, I can really set myself deadlines, and then, it's done. Like I don't have to wait for anybody else to do it for me. So I like that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I hear from indie authors, is that the control it's worth it.
Right. You don't know what a control freak you are until you become an indie author. Just kidding.
My mom used to tell me I was controlling all the time, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
You are. Never do. That's funny. Right. Relatable.
Yeah. I keep thinking about that because I get asked all the time, how on earth do I make it as an indie author? I keep thinking of coming up with a summit and having a bunch of people come together and talk about that. And because I've had a few people, like I had a guy come on, he has a publishing company. It's an independent publishing company out of Florida.
Yeah.
And he, teaches people how to be a bestseller. He was actually giving his book away for free on how to become a best-selling author.
Awesome.
Another lady, that's what she does, is she promotes indie authors. And I'm like, how about we just get all these people together and have them all share some knowledge? Like,
yeah, it definitely helps if you know people. I mean, if you have your community and the people that you're interacting with regularly, I mean, it is definitely a thing right now. I noticed that there's like a surgence of like people getting together and creating these conferences and summits, and I feel like there can't be too many of them. Like if you pick the right time of year, to just be like, this is when we're doing this. This is our thing. Like I say, go for it 100%.
Yeah.